I think we got everybody set.
Good afternoon. It's 4:01 Tuesday, July 5th, 2022, and I'm calling the Park and Rec Committee meeting to order. We do have a quorum present. Do we have any public comment or suggestions today?
Yes, thank you. Gary Gisselman, 319 Park Avenue, alderperson for the 5th District. Last month, I spoke about the issue that I had with regard to North 4th Avenue and the tree planting. I was able to find it, and I'm sure that it may be sitting in the Parks Department, but the draft of the City of Wausau Tree Planting Preservation and Specification Manual that was passed by the Park and Recs Committee back in November of October, November of 2019, and I would be glad to share it because I think it's up to the chair in this committee, of course, how it wants to proceed, but I think it would be a good review as we go into new seasons of construction, that we take a look and see, exactly what those specifications were. I include the November 4th, 2019 minutes that say that this was approved in October. So I'll pass this on to the chair, and then it's sort of in the committee's hands. I think that it's, I'm sure that's it, but just so
Thank
the
you, Gary.
committee is again.
Are we able to put this on the agenda for next month?
We could put it on the agenda for next month. Yeah.
Okay, we will do that. We'll put this on the agenda for.
Because I think
next
that
month.
this is something the committee may want, this committee is responsible for the urban forestry, and I just want to bring this as a friendly reminder of what did happen in 2019. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gisselman. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes from Tuesday, June 20th, 22 meeting. Do I have a motion? Motion made by Sarah. Do I have a second? By Carol. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. Any nays? Motion passed. Going on to number 4, which is discussion and possible action on city comprehensive outdoor recreation plan update. And I believe I'm turning that over to Jamie.
Yes, thank you. I will just give a little brief introduction, and then we will let Becky kind of take it away from there. So on the TV, you'll see Becky from MSA, our consultant that we've hired for this project, meeting with us virtually today to talk us through some of the process that we're going to do for the outdoor recreation plan. So the city's outdoor recreation plan, I guess I can turn this so that it's not right up my nose, but right here. So our city's outdoor recreation plan was good from 2017 through 2021. And we had money in the budget last year to update it, so it'd be ready to go for 2022. And our workload just didn't allow for that last year. So we are getting it done this year so we can update it and move forward for the next 5 years. So today is the kickoff meeting that Becky will walk us through kind of that process of what we're going to work towards as a partnership with the consultant and getting community feedback, updating our inventory, and then where it will go, what process it will go through there. We did have an initial meeting already to kind of talk through the timeline, which in your packet you will see the scope of the project, which we'll go through today, along with the sample survey, and that's what she would like to get your feedback on today. So I'm going to introduce Miss Becky Binns, if I said that correctly.
Good.
And Becky, you can take it away from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Becky Binns. I'm a planner at MSA. I'll be the project manager on the Corp update. I'm very excited to work on this one. So I am a Wausau native. I spent the first 19 years of my life in Wausau, so this is very exciting to be here working with you all tonight. Just to get started, I just wanted to go kind of high-level overview. What is a Corp? What are we doing here? And then go through kind of generally what the scope includes and what the final project is going to include. So if you aren't familiar, a Corp is a 5+ year plan. It's meant to guide the city's annual budgeting process and capital improvement plans. It is a requirement by the Wisconsin DNR to have a quote, current Corp. So that's why you're going through the update. So if you do want to apply for grants, then you are eligible if you have an up-to-date Corp.
And here's
then
ours,
kind of-
if anyone, sorry, Becky, here's ours, if you haven't seen it, it says, is on our website too, that even though it went through 2021, it's still there, and that's what we're working off of, so.
Yeah, so you have that, we're working off of that. The things we look at in the corp, so we do look at parks, we are gonna be looking at rec programming, looking at trails, and then kind of anything else that falls under park and rec. So it is a bit more than just parks. All right, and with that, we'll just go quickly through the scope. So the first phase is what we're in now. We're in phases 1 and 2, the existing conditions analysis. Like Jamie said, we're gonna be starting with the corp that you guys already have in place, looking at recommendations from there. We'll look at your comprehensive plan, the citywide plan, to pull any relevant recommendations into the update. We'll also look at the Marathon County outdoor recreation plan, which we updated, MSA updated with you guys a few years ago. And then if there are any individual master plans, and then we'll of course look at the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan as well. And then the city is helping us update your park inventory and what is in your parks and kind of condition of those elements. We did some of the mapping, which I'll show you guys a preview of that tonight, and a profile of prospective park users. So we looked at approximately I'm not sharing my screen, am I?
No, you're not, so I can stop sharing, I just didn't know if you wanted me to share or not, so,
I was going to. but-
okay, I'll
Yeah.
stop sharing, there you go.
Okay. I'm glad you pulled it up direct with me.
There we
All
go,
right. So here's where we are at.
yes, we can,
So looking at kind of, you can see it?
yep,
Okay. So we're looking at who's living within 10 minutes of each park and kind of what the demographics are, and that might inform how we change recommendations for those parks. We do quantitative analysis, so we look at the total amount of parkland you guys have and compare Wausau to cities of similar size. We'll also look at park amenities and compare what you guys have actually in your parks to communities of similar size. The National Park and Recreation Association has some really awesome metrics. They do surveys of all park and rec departments across the US. It's really great data, so we'll pull some good numbers from there. And then we're here tonight with our first kickoff meeting to go through some of this preliminary findings and talk a little bit about the survey, which is the next phase that we're going to move into our qualitative analysis. So this is going to be our big public engagement piece. So that's something that DNR requires. They don't say what kind of public engagement you have to do, just that you need some kind of public input. And typically we get a lot of really good feedback through a survey. So we're going to work through that and hopefully do some awesome outreach and get good feedback that way. Once we have the public engagement, we'll pull together some preliminary park needs. So that's going to be combining the surveys, combining what we hear from you guys tonight, combining what we hear from staff, and then pulling that all into some preliminary recommendations. And then we're going to meet with Jamie again to go through that list. And then we're going to pull through the entire plan. Once we have those preliminary recommendations more or less okay, we're going to pull together the full document. We're going to update the goals and objectives you guys had in your last plan, go through the analysis of park needs and demands, and those are all that kind of like numbers analysis and the survey that I went through, really building up to chapter 5, which is the recommendations. And so we're going to update the 2-page summary sheets that you guys have in your current plan, which we also did in Marathon County. And so when the two plans are eventually merged together, they should fit together pretty nicely. So we're going to update those spreads. You'll have all the existing amenities, condition, and then recommendations all on that sheet for each park. We'll make recommendations for new parks. So we'll have a proposed parks and trails maps based on what we hear from you guys, what we hear from public feedback. So there'll be new trails, new parks, existing trails as well. And then chapter 6, our implementation chapter. So we'll look at your funding and how that relates to the recommendations. Might we want to suggest additional staffing or additional equipment based on what we're planning? So we're going to go through some of those funding and staffing requirements similar to what we did in Marathon County. And then the other big piece in that implementation chapter is going to be the capital improvement summary. I think arguably that's one of the more useful parts of the plan, is pulling together all those recommendations with cost estimates. We're going to work with you guys and Jamie to prioritize those recommendations and that'll all just be in one nice chart that you can reference when you do your annual budgeting. And then we'll go through some typical funding options, look a little bit at your park impact fees and fee in lieu of land dedications, see kind of how those compare to nearby communities. And that is the full plan. And then once we have that full plan together, we'll meet again with Jamie to kind of do a first crack at the draft, and then incorporate her edits. And then the second time that we'll come back in front of you guys is in November to go through the entire plan. And as long as everything looks okay, the idea would be to then have recommendation from the Parks Commission, and then we go ideally to council for adoption of the plan. And once we have all that squared away, then we'll pull together an executive summary similar to what we did for Marathon Counties. You can get kind of the quick hits for each park if someone doesn't want to go through the entire corp document. So that's the plan in a nutshell. Like I said, we'll meet with you guys again in November, so we're on kind of a 6-month time frame. Yeah, it's very doable. So any questions, comments on schedule, scope items?
We do have one.
Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few questions in terms of the data surrounding the parks and nearby areas, and then also one question on the public input process. For some of the demographic data nearby the parks, might it also be possible to get some percentages of age segments, like percentage of population under the age of 5? Because I think it would be useful for the Parks Committee and Department to have that information to kind of identify what age segments are using those parks, and therefore what needs could be identified and satisfied for those age segments. Just a couple others on the data points. I see that you've got median household income, but based on the 10-minute walking distance, I'm not sure what the miles per hour is on the walk, but that could be much of the city. Wausau is not a big place. Would it be possible to get the percentage of low-income residents in the census block group area that park resides in?
I think so. I'll have to check with our GIS analyst, but we can pull that in, so I think there's probably a way to clip it by the boundary.
Yes,
I can check.
thank you. And EPA's EJ screen has that data along with the age data as well. And then one other question for the public input process, using the same tool, EJ screen, it's got linguistic isolation data. Could there be some sense of what the linguistic isolation is in that census block group area, so that if it's high, like the western area of my district at 16%, then you'll know when you're doing the public input process, then you might need multilingual materials, such as Hmong, for example. So those would be my thoughts, if it's possible to incorporate that into the process. Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay.
No? Okay. All right, thank you. We will check into those. All right, so next, the survey. So we have a draft of the survey included. We don't need to go through every question tonight. But I just wanted to take a look at a few things. Let me go back up just to talk a little bit about the survey logistics. So the survey is going to be promoted online. It's going to be an online survey. We will have some hard copies available. Right now, we're looking at availability between July 14th and August 11th. We can talk about some edits tonight, but if you have any edits that it would just be easier to send to Jamie, or you want to take a closer look at it after we meet, I ask that you please return any edits to Jamie by June 11th, and she can forward those on to me.
By July 11th.
Yep. Yes, I think I did this when I met with you too. Yes, July 11th. Yep.
All right.
that should give us enough time to get those edits incorporated and then have the survey finalized. When Jamie and I met, we talked a little bit about survey outreach. Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like the school district would likely be on board to help with promotion, which I think is great. That usually helps numbers quite a bit. We can tap into their parent portal or whatever they use to contact parents. We talked about using the city website, any city social media, doing e-blasts to civic organizations or sports organizations, any email databases the city might have, tapping into those. We can put together a flyer that you guys can print, like a physical flyer to hang in locations. So just kind of those typical things you would do to get the survey out. I think we had a good start on that, but is there anything that anyone would like to bring up that, yeah, we definitely want to make sure we reach out to this group, or let's try this has worked well for us in the past, anything that you want to bring up?
I think the school district one, if we can tap onto that, is very helpful. It is summertime, so, but we still do get updates, but we can do that way. Big one for us too will be an email blast we have in our database. You know, anybody that's participated in any of our programs or has season passes to like the pools or bike passes, we can do an email blast for input on this and target we can target everybody that does it, or we could target just City of Wausau residents, since it's the City of Wausau Corp. And it's based on city parks, but we have the ability to define what those boundaries are.
Nice. And we can sort the survey responses by resident versus non-resident, which is one of the nice things about SurveyMonkey. So when we do summarize the survey results, we'll give you any questions where the responses may have differed between residents and overall responses.
Okay, Becky, we have one question.
Sure.
It's actually a comment, just that there still are 3 weeks left of summer school. So I don't know, when would you want the rollout to be?
I think July 14th is the rollout, if we can.
So that's close to the end of summer school, but there will still be summer school, so it may help
Yeah,
a little. Yeah.
that's a good point.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
And we'll put together the physical flyer, like I mentioned. We'll put together the e-blast language, put together a little badge you can use on social media. So we'll send Jamie all those materials. So then you'll just be charged with reaching out to all those groups. But hopefully we take a lot of the work out of it for you. So if no questions on the survey logistics, is there anything anyone wanted to point out? Any edits off the bat? Anything we missed?
I have one more. I just want to support what Alder Killian said, because I've had some questions in my area about like a porta potty at the park and things like that. So I think having, if at all possible, to have that information about, you know, the demographic, extra demographic, if possible, I do think that could be useful in a number of ways.
Getting that from the survey respondents, the demographic information?
Yes, yes.
Anybody else see anything with the survey as it is now? I mean, you can still take it and look at it and provide me comments, but anything in the initial review?
Looks good.
Okay. All right, so next are park maps. So I think we got everything squared away. We got GIS data from the county and I think some from the city. So I guess let us know. I know Jamie's taking a look at this just to make sure we didn't miss anything. But I think it's all up to date. There were a few missing parks, but so the next maps were built off of that existing parks map. So these are the park service areas. And so I talked originally about that 10-minute walk area. And where that comes from, so that's part of a national initiative between the National Park and Recreation Association, Trust for Public Land, and Urban Land Institute. It's a goal, nationwide goal that by 2050, every person will be within a 10-minute walk of a park. So that's what we're using here, and that's kind of the standard we're going to use in the updated corp. NRPA used to have like they used to have metrics, I think they were from like the 90s. This is kind of the latest and greatest. So that's what we've applied here, and you notice that I have 2 park service area maps in the packet. So the first is just City of Wausau parks. And the highlighting, so the red and the yellows that you're seeing outside of the green park service areas are areas that are zoned residential or mixed use, but they fall outside of that 10-minute walk area. So knowing that you guys have county parks and your county and city parks are operating as one, we made a second map to include Marathon County parks that fall within the boundary of the city. And so you can see the park service area creeps out a little bit more. Like for Marathon Park, you get more coverage in the surrounding neighborhoods, and there's a little bit less yellow. But there's still some areas, I guess my attention is drawn to the areas that are yellow. The red is mixed use, so it could be residential or commercial or something else. But definitely the lighter to darker yellow areas and the brown areas too, that's your multifamily, which is really critical. And I think we're seeing a lot of that kind of at the edges of the city, which is pretty typical. As communities expand, they grow outward and, develop parks along with that. So those are some of the areas that we're likely going to be looking at when we're recommending new parks. And like I said, we are going to be taking into account county parks, and we know that there are school parks. So that's a question that I get a lot is, well, why aren't we including city or school parks? And the reason for that is they are great. They are not technically under city control. They are not open at all times of the day. So if there are underserved areas, we'll call that out in the corp, but we'll also say, hey, there also is a school park nearby, and it offers these amenities, so it might be serving the needs of the nearby residents, but it isn't open all the time, and it isn't technically under city control to make improvements. So that's something we'll call out. Any questions on either of the park service area maps or anything that you think is missing as far as parks or trails?
Nope, we're not seeing any
Nope.
comments.
Nope.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, we have one.
Thank you. Could you just clarify a little more when you talked about the kind of goldish yellow, what that indicates? Did you say potential new park areas?
So the yellow is land that's zoned residential, but falls outside of a park service area.
Okay, thank you.
So at the bottom, so at the bottom of the maps, we also have the multifamily, which is brown, mixed use, and then rural holding, which is likely where the city would expand in the future.
Okay, perhaps that's the color that the rural holding color.
Yeah.
Could you explain that once again, please?
Sure, yeah, so the rural holding is an ag transition area. Typically communities have these, and this is where they intend to grow, but it's generally areas that are being used as ag and just haven't been rezoned and may be rezoned in the future. That's typically what we see.
Thank
So
you.
I'm not 100% sure they'd be residential, but very possible. Yep.
Thanks.
Jamie,
Any other questions?
it looks like the maps in the packets don't have the wording. I downloaded it from the website and from the other thing. Is it possible to get those 2 maps emailed to us?
Don't have the which wording.
Any of it? Yeah, it's just a bunch of dots.
Yeah. It was
So-
tough to read.
I've zoomed in and I
Figure out.
can't. Not, like the legends aren't labeled or anything, so I don't know.
Oh,
The text wasn't showing up?
it's not on the electronic, but it is, like, I printed it out, so I have a printed copy, and I can read it on the printed copy.
Oh.
Did you try to print it out?
No.
Oh. We can send, can you see it on the screen? Oh.
I can see it there. I just
Okay.
can't see it on my screen or on website.
Okay, we can look and see what kind of, or what happened with the file, because I printed out the packet, I've got it in front of me, and I can read it all. So it was there as part of the file, and I just printed this off of the website, but yeah, I can send out a better, or I can resend these out, because they have them. And they're included in the survey part, so, okay. I'll see what happened on there and get the right ones updated, because we should be able to read them. I can read mine, so I'll get them to you.
Okay, yeah, let me know if you have issues. I don't know, it could be the font too. Sometimes that happens to me. GIS folks have the latest and greatest.
Any
It could be
other,
the way it was
And I don't.
transferred onto the website too, but yeah, I'll double check.
Yeah.
any
Okay,
other
let me know.
questions or
No problem.
concerns? Any other questions or concerns for Becky? We're done?
She's got.
All right. So the next thing is the quantitative analysis. So looking at the total acreage of parkland, you guys have a typical measure that communities use is acres of parkland per 1,000 residents to see kind of how they're serving parks. This is just one way we look at how you're serving the community. So in your last corp, you set a standard of 10.5 acres per 1,000 residents. Which was what NRPA was using at the time as their standard. So using that, we have the population through 2020 through 2040, taking those projections from the Wisconsin Department of Administration, and then we have your total supply of just city parks in the row below that. And then the demand column is based on that 10.5 acres per 1,000, how many acres of parkland do we need in the community? And for 2020, that is 420 acres. So there is technically a deficit of about 33 acres. But again, this doesn't include the Marathon County parkland, which we will include, and we will say what those numbers are if you include the parkland, because we know that some of those parks are serving Wausau residents as well. So, but strictly looking at city parkland, there's technically a deficit of parkland, and through 2040, that deficit grows to about 39 acres. So right now the city alone is providing 9.7 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. If no new parkland is added by 2040, the city will be providing 9.5 acres per 1,000. And if we include Marathon County, those numbers are going to be higher. The figure below is taking that 9.7 acres and comparing it to communities of similar size through those NRPA metrics that I talked about. So for 2022, agencies across the US with jurisdictions between 20 and about 50,000, the lower quartile of acres per 1,000 is just over 5. The median is, I think, about 10.2, and then the upper quartile is around 17. So you guys fall right around the median, and if we include that Marathon County parkland, it's likely closer to the upper quartile. Any questions on the acreage analysis?
Nope.
So the next piece I have in here is the prospective park users. And so this is doing what I said before. We're taking each park and we're putting a 10-minute walk around it. And then we're looking at the demographics within a 10-minute walk of each of those parks. And I just pulled some things that stood out to me, some key findings below that. So some of the parks with youth, those under 15, so the highest percentage of prospective park users who are youth fall around Pleasant View, I don't know how to say that, Boilo Field?
Yeah, that's a ball field, Boilo.
Okay, Athletic Park, Riverside Park, and River Life Parks. Pleasant View Park has the highest percentage of population considered youth. Just sheer quantity of, was there a question?
Nope.
No.
Okay. Just looking at sheer numbers of people around each park, so the Lincoln Tot Lot had the total greatest number of people living around it within that 10-minute walk radius. We looked a little bit at the non-white population. And so Rib River Park has the highest percentage prospective park users who are non-white. Right now that is 32% of those living within the 10-minute walk. This is projected to increase to 34% by 2026. The park with the lowest median household income around it is the Barker Stewart Island Park. And then we looked at seniors living around parks. And so the two parks that have the greatest percentage of users age 65 and older are Sylvan Hill and Gilbert parks. And so I think looking at these, just looking at where people may be going, the higher numbers of users, or parks that may be serving seniors, or parks that may be serving youth, that may inform how we change recommendations. Maybe we look at adding more senior amenities to parks where the senior population is projected to stay higher than average. So I think that's an interesting exercise to go through. Is there anything that stands out to anyone about any of these parks, any of the demographics?
Tom?
Thank you. And it just goes back to that kind of 10-minute walking radius. Do you find that's most representative in terms of residents who frequent the parks, that 10-minute walking radius? And the reason I ask is just given the kind of small, relatively small geographic area of Wausau, you know, you can kind of transverse quite a bit of the city in 10 minutes. You know, we're not in, say, Chicago. So does that really give kind of realistic, representative numbers of those who are frequenting neighborhood parks? Or would there be a way to tighten it up if other data would suggest it might be more accurate or representative, so that it's a little tighter than the 10-minute walk? And I can give you an example. Let me if I just take a quick look, if I can pull it. Okay, so let's look. Riverside Park, you know, it's stating, for example, let's see, 2021 non-white population, 30%. That census block group area next to the park would actually be closer to 50%. So just given those kind of dramatic differences, are we certain that a 10-minute walk is the best way to look at that?
I think it's one way of looking at it. I mean, I know some of these parks draw people from all over the community, I think, as most parks do. I guess looking at who's living directly around it is, I mean, if you can walk to a park, I know the park that I can walk to is the park I go to with my kids, and I think that's true for a lot of people. I think there are definitely destination parks that we walk to, and we know those are serving more people. But I also think that, I mean, there are a lot of neighborhood parks that exist, and there are parks that we are walking to, people are walking to, just because they're nearby. I think that's one of the top reasons when we do a park survey, why is this your favorite park? Because it's close to home. So I think it's an important thing to look at, but you're right, some of these parks are being used by people that drive to them. So this is just one way of looking at it. I mean, we're looking at demographics of the entire community as well.
Okay.
I think that neighborhood park piece and what's close to nearby, I think that's an important thing to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. No other questions? The next thing is a little bit of homework for you all. And so city staff is going to be going through a similar exercise. But what the ask is that if you guys could individually or as a group go out and tour, ideally every city of Wausau park, but there are a lot of them. So if you can't get to all of them, that's fine. You can read through this before you do the park tours, but what we're asking you to do is look at needs and wants at each city park. And so needs are going to be things that are really critical. There may be ADA issues that want to get fixed, or safety hazards for kids, things that need to happen for sure. The wants are maybe a little bigger picture dream. Maybe we want a splash pad here, or we want a zip line here, something that isn't critical but you think would be a really great piece, or is something that you've heard from the community that people want to see in a specific park. So if you guys could do this and email completed forms to Jamie, and she can get those back to me by August 1st, that'll give me enough time to get those recommended into our first draft of recommendations.
And all these dates are included in that memo that's in your packet too,
Yep.
so.
Any questions on the park tours?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so then the last thing I wanted to do is really hear from you guys on what you guys think is going well and what your hopes and dreams are for City of Wausau Park. So I just want to have a little bit of discussion before I sign off. So my first question I want to pose to you is, what do you all think are the strengths of the Wausau Park system?
Anybody?
It's gotta be
Go
fun.
ahead, Tom.
Feel like I'm monopolizing the floor here, but I'll inject a little more, I guess. I'd just like to say some positives on some things. You know, I think there's a wide variety of different positives. It'd be hard to inventory them all, but I'll talk about one that intersected with the block grant program that Miss Polly had brought to it last term, and it is in some of the neighborhoods, the new revamped play equipment for the kids. I know that in my district, especially in the Western Ward with 3M Park, they just put kind of it was the first in state type playground there, and they're going to be putting more in Riverside Park. I've just heard a tremendous amount of feedback from families on how positive and well received that was. And I think particularly in areas of kind of more modest financial means, and we talked about this with the block grant program as well, you know, sometimes we see that kids may not have play gyms in their backyards and things like that at as high a frequency or rate. So with these, the new play equipment in these parks, I just think it's made a very positive difference and impact.
So I would echo that. I think especially for children who don't have this kind of equipment in their backyards, I also think that the value of having a place, I know during COVID, that was definitely important for you know, a place for people to go in the outdoors. I think it's also that they're also very important for community building, even among the adults that are going there with their children. I know I've been to different parks and have, you know, struck up conversations with people, and for people getting to know each other in their neighborhoods, whether they, you know, live in those same neighborhoods or not. I think there are a number of that they're valuable for a number of reasons. Thank you.
Sarah or Dawn? Got anything?
Nope,
No?
nope. I'm good.
No? Okay.
We can thank Vicki.
Nope, not yet. We've
Not
got a
yet.
couple more questions. Yep.
Okay.
Anything else?
I would also just say they're a place to go where it doesn't cost, you know, the family money. So that's super important for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I would add that I think a couple strengths of our park system is that we do have them fairly spread out. I mean, the map does have some gaps where we need to look at, but we do have them pretty well spread out. And we have some unique parks, like Athletic Park, you know, it has a playground at it, but it's also a place where families can go. It does have a fee. Sylvan Hill, you know, our outdoor ice rinks, JoJo's Jungle, I think, is a really big strength of our community. It's one of a kind. It's not one we're going to put in every park, but
Yeah.
that's a destination one. So those are the couple of strengths that I see. It's a diversity of activities that people can be part of.
Mhm. That is very true. I would say the river too. I mean, just what you guys have done. I've been impressed at how much it has changed since I've grown up, and it's really become a focal point. And I feel like it's a great asset for the community. And you guys have done really amazing things with it. I'm gonna add that to the list.
Yeah.
All right. What do you think is missing? Are there things that you guys think needed to be added to specific parks, maybe the park system as a whole? What isn't there that you think needs to be added?
Becky, I personally am looking forward to going out and visiting the parks. At that point, I think I will be able to form a more of a valued opinion.
Okay, that's fair.
I do have one. I've heard from many people that there needs to be more for adolescents, young adults to do in this area. And, you know, there may be more than what I realize, but a lot of our parks, well, and me too. I need to go to more of them to be able to see first. But I know that with Skateboard Park, that, you know, redoing that's going to be big. I don't know. I have no answers as far as, or offerings as far as specific options, but I just know that is something I've heard from a lot of people.
Have you heard specific things or just generally more activities for adolescents?
Yeah, I haven't heard specifically, but just in general that there's not a lot for adolescents to do. You know, I think the parks are easy for younger children, but maybe not everyone plays tennis or, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I certainly will ask around about that.
I'm just going to throw this out there because I know that it's come up to me is our Youth Baseball Association. You know, the old way of thinking of a neighborhood park is to add a ball field to every park so that every neighborhood had a ball field. Now they're being used more for competition by the youth baseball, and Wausau Youth Baseball doesn't bring a tournament here. They do have a smaller one at Sunnyvale, but they don't bring a tournament here because we don't have an area where there are multiple baseball fields in one location. It's too hard logistically for them to have one where they're traveling all over. So that's something that they would say is a need. Now, whether it's in the city of Wausau proper or within the area is a question of where it could go, but that is something that they need or would like in the area. And then another need for not necessarily parks, but we need connection to the parks. So we have some trail gaps that we need to look at and make sure we highlight in the plan as well.
Tom?
Thank you. Yes, I just had a question on Ms. Polly's point about multiple baseball fields in one location. Do you have any idea roughly how much acreage that might take? I mean, is that something we could accommodate in town, or do you anticipate the acreage on something like that would be pretty tremendous?
Yeah, I just met with youth baseball actually last week, and they really like, 4 or more. The 4 complex would be ideal, 6, 8 would be better. That's really thinking big. But about 20 acres is what would probably be a good site. It can be done on smaller. Some communities have done it on smaller acreage, but to set them out, to put them in the right angle, to have the concession stand, have the parking, about 20.
Okay, thank you.
And there are some
Were there
private,
any-
there are some private lands that are within the city that potentially could be a site, but, there's cost to those too. So.
Were there any specific locations that were brought up as ideal? Didn't really go there.
Well, baseball's looking at a few of those private ones, so I'm going to wait to hear what they hear back, because if they're, completely not available, then I don't want to put private landowners on there.
Yeah.
But city parcels, no, not necessarily. We don't have anything big enough that the city owns at this point, so.
Okay. All right. Last question. I guess what's the next big park project you guys want to tackle? Is there a big park project? Sounds like it could be this ball field, but maybe it's something else.
Year-round ice rink.
Uh,
There's many big projects that we would like or want.
what else? What else has come up?
I think there's a desire for like a pedestrian bridge across the river somewhere, depending on where it's going to connect, but. We have a couple undeveloped parcels. They're smaller parcels, but there could be, based on this plan, if they are in an area that doesn't serve part of the community, maybe we look at developing or adding some amenities to those pieces to serve that area that's left out at the current process. Nothing in particular, though, that I can think of from our current outdoor recreation plan that hasn't been done. You know, we don't have another river life plan or anything like that that I can think of.
Okay. Could you send me those parcels? The city is looking at those undeveloped parcels that are smaller.
Yeah, well, they're on our list too, when you gave the map list.
Oh, they are, okay.
Yep, so the map
Okay, so they're
has,
undeveloped parts.
yep, they're undeveloped.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
I think like a connection between like the west side trail from Pick and Save down to the city and to like the different islands.
Mhm.
That would be pretty awesome.
So we don't have to go on the railroad bridge?
A little safer. Anything else?
Tom?
Thank you. I'll just throw one out there. It's been talked about, I think, not only in town, but other cities in Wisconsin, and often will be facing kind of brownfield properties where there's, some confusion as to what the future use may be and how it might be useful to the community at large. And if such properties exist in town, which they do, and some of them have been sitting there for decades, I think any way to recapture those, to leverage for park use, or even looking at distribution of dog parks in relation to various neighborhoods in town, like is that distribution equitable, or is the west side missing one, or is the southwest side? So I think recapturing brownfields for community use not only serves a utility, but there's also some poetry to that in taking these formerly contaminated lands and using them in a green way. So that one thought there.
Are there specific brownfield properties that you have in mind?
Well, in the immediate future, I think answering that question would be hard, but for example, on the southwest side, currently, if you look at known contaminated properties and presumed to be contaminated properties, you'd be essentially looking at roughly 20 acres of land within a residential area. Some of that is city-owned and some of that is privately owned, but for long-term strategic approaches, it might make sense to take a look at that, since it's rare to have such acreage kind of a city in the middle of city or residential neighborhood.
Yeah, well, we can take a look. I know BRRTS on the web has all those sites, so we'll take a look at kind of where those are and pull that in and maybe look at those as potential sites too.
Just one other thing that I myself have thought of, and I know other people have talked about it, is, and this may not be at all possible, but an indoor dog park for people walking in the winters, because it's pretty treacherous for people who, it can be pretty treacherous for walking in the city in the winters here. But that's just kind of more more of a dream, more of a luxury.
Good. Anything else? Any other big dreams for the parks? Can see what happens with the park tours too. That'll probably get some ideas going.
Yep.
I guess that is all I had.
Okay.
Does anyone have any final comments or final questions?
No, we'll see how the survey shakes out.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting, and I'll work with Jamie to get that up and running in the next couple of weeks. And I won't see you guys again until November, but I know Jamie's planning on bringing you guys updates as we meet and accomplish the different phases. So you'll be hearing about the project, but I'll see you again in November.
Thank you very much, Becky. Appreciate all your work
Thank
and
you all.
help.
Yeah, thank you,
Have a
Becky.
good night.
So just a reminder, July 11th to get me any updates to the survey, and then August 1st for park information, and then I'll get them to Becky. All right, wonderful. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Okay.
And now we're moving on to the discussion and action on our presentation on invasive species, other than myself.
Yes, I wanted to introduce Jared Mader from our County Conservation Planning and Zoning Department, and also Chris Hammerlaw from Golden Sands. They're going to be presenting some information today about some of the work that CPZ is going to be doing on Barker Stewart Island to help us with invasives. In addition, I can give you a quick update that I found out today is the goats will be coming back July, now I have to find the date. I want to say the 11th, which is already next Monday, or it's the 18th. I will find the date and then I'll let you know. But there's some other work that is going to be done. And then just some information on invasives in general, because I've gotten some questions from a number of you. And there's a lot out there with buckthorn and honeysuckle and Japanese knotweed, and we're going to go through some of that. So
Yeah, it sounds like your park tour might be a good opportunity to
yeah,
keep an eye out after our little presentation today. So.
yes. So I will start this slideshow, and then you can just tell me when to.
Is this going to work or?
Probably not. Is it?
No. Oh, well.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyways,
You can tell me when.
my name's Jared Motter. I'm the Water Resources Technician for Marathon County Conservation Planning and Zoning. My contact information's on that first slide there. You can go to the next one.
And we can get you, can I share this presentation after, if you want to email it to me? I can share it to
Yep.
the committee. Okay.
Yeah. So this is just a little bit of what I do for Marathon County. I do a lot of work with restoring vegetation in riparian or shoreland areas, promoting better land management practices to improve water quality in our watersheds, providing technical assistance to landowners on native planting plans, stormwater management plans, things like that, and then repairing damaged wetlands and restoring wetland areas. You can go to the next one. So the reason we're here talking tonight is we've identified Barker Stewart Island as being a good area for a possible restoration. Currently, the island is overrun with invasive and undesirable species. So the long-term goal would be to remove these species and replace them with more native species that will provide better habitat and better shoreline health for the area. Another reason this island was chosen as a possible restoration project is there's already been a little bit of work done by the Wausau Bird Club. They've done some native tree planting, so it would be a good idea to just enhance what they've already started. So a couple of the areas that we were looking at in the northern part of the island there, that's where the Bird Club has done a little bit of planting already. So the plan would be to remove the rest of the invasive species in those areas and just add to it some more native shrubs and tree species and provide better bird habitat, whether that be for providing food or shelter. And then the other area is in the southeastern part of the island near the sign there. And that spot's great because it's got a lot of visibility from actually both sides of the river. And so it would provide a good demonstration site to hopefully educate people on the importance of using native vegetation for shoreland health and habitat. The island also provides a good opportunity for some collaboration because of its location. We held a little kickoff meeting, you could say, a planning meeting earlier in June, and we had members from all these different entities were able to make it. So Conservation Planning and Zoning, Parks, Wausau Bird Club, Golden Sands, and actually the American Bird Conservancy. And these were just some pictures on the left. That was Linnea from the Bird Conservancy, just giving us a little bit of education and rundown of what types of species might be desirable on the island, how we might be able to combat some of the invasive species that are there. And then on the right is the area near the sign. It's tough to tell, but in that picture there's probably at least 4 different invasive species that have kind of overrun the area. So it would provide a great spot to start because it's a manageable size, and hopefully we'd be able to remove a lot of those invasives and replace them with some more native species that are a little bit more beneficial for what we're trying to do. So I guess with that, I'm going to kick it over to Chris, and he's going to give a little bit of education on what to look for invasive species and some removal strategies.
Now, these purple ones on the island, those are invasive, right?
Correct. That's Dame's rocket.
Thank you, Jared. Hello, my name is Chris Hammerla. I'm with Golden Sands Resource Conservation and Development Council. We're based in Stevens Point. We're a non-for-profit organization. We do a lot of work with private landowners, county entities, all municipalities, groups. We do conservation work, agricultural. My funding actually comes through DNR, Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, for aquatic invasive species, but that trickles over into a lot of shoreline, wetland species as well, which is why I can come talk to you today. But to kind of transition from where Jared was going with, the Barker Stewart Island is a kind of a perfect area because, it's, as we were just talking with the last presentation, the accessibility of walking there for a lot of people that might maybe live on the fringe, but people that are working within the city going there. But because it's along the river edge, if you improve that area, the invasive species, which we'll get into in a little bit here, a lot of times you end up with very few species taking over a large area. And your quality habitat is always going to have high diversity of species. And these are things that when we take out the invasive or the undesirable species, you can actually improve the diversity, which is not only just during the summer. We think of it a lot of time when we're doing these plantings, what can we put in there that's going to look nice? It's going to create shade. It's going to look pretty. But a lot of those, if we plant the right things, they're going to provide habitat and food during the winter. In my yard, I've got a rain garden that is probably no bigger than the size of this area that I'm standing in. But any given day when you go through there in the summer, I've got the most butterflies in my yard of my whole neighborhood. Come February, those plants have seeds on them. There's always goldfinches, chickadees, juncos, cardinals. It's just amazing, this little area. So if you do that on a river corridor on that island, there's a really good impact. And then it's also just for viewing pleasure of people being down there. Next slide. So basically, I just wanted to give a quick overview, not knowing maybe what your knowledge of invasive species are, but typically they're non-indigenous or they're not normally found here. A lot of times we might think that, and we use the word invasive, they're exotic, so they're not normally found here. We do have native plants and animals that have invasive tendencies, but for what we're talking about exotics that come from typically a different country, though they might come from just a different state. Maybe they were moved up here, normally they didn't exist here, but somehow got transported here, and they've really established and taken over, and they can have an impact, whether economically or through the environment, impacts that way. Again, we already discussed decreased biodiversity, so I won't take any more time on that, but just a quick update. In Wisconsin, we actually have an administrative code or a rule that helps define what invasive species are, and then it kind of regulates them. So NR40, basically, again, it'll help clarify what species fall into that category, and then it lists them as regulated or restricted or prohibited. Restricted ones may be like the Dames rocket that you saw in that picture earlier, or purple loosestrife, if you're familiar with that, buckthorn. These are species that are found all over the state of Wisconsin. We have them in Wausau area, Marathon County. They're restricted in what you can do with them, but they're here to stay. We really don't feel we're going to get rid of them. The prohibited species are species that are only found in small areas or they're not found here yet. So those species, if found, there is management that's required on them. So that's a little bit about our invasive species law. Next slide. So what are some of the more common invasive species that we might want to look at? And the reason I picked some of these is I thought they might be important because we do have them in the area. As we're going out and about and looking at these park areas, do we have them there? Is it something that we need to be worried about? So the first one I chose is the knotweeds, which are actually more of a shrubby bush. We have Japanese bohemian and giant in the state of Wisconsin, but they were historically planted because in the picture, like you can see, they do form a natural hedgerow. So if you're looking to have privacy in your yard, they're great for that. The problem is that's all that's going to grow there. And Japanese knotweed can become established really quickly, especially on river corridors or shorelines. And because there's nothing else that can grow underneath it, its root structure really doesn't hold sediment very well, so you can have erosion issues. It is also known the roots and the rhizomes can work their way through asphalt and concrete. So they can cause issues with roads, buildings, and things of that matter. Next slide.
If we seize one of these somewhere, are you gonna go over like what we can do?
Yeah.
I know
I'll
exactly
kind of
where there's
recap
some
that at the end.
Japanese knotweed, that's really
Yeah,
bad.
this is just a closer look at Japanese knotweed. The picture on the right is more, you can see more of the stem and stalk. If you see a plant that looks like bamboo, it's going to be Japanese knotweed. It literally has those chambers, and you can see the segments. Other than that, it's got a heart-shaped leaf. Not all bad. When this stuff flowers in August, it's very fragrant. It smells good. It does attract pollinators, like bees, but the overall picture is not good. Next slide. Buckthorns, again, commonly sold right around here in the 70s and 80s. People bought it like crazy for hedgerows. How it really spread beyond that is the birds like to eat the berries, and then they fly somewhere and they deposit the feces, and the seeds are still there. Again, it just has a chance to really overtake areas. We've been working over a decade down at Oak Island, Fern Island, to remove it there, and it is making a difference. It just allows, again, a variety of plants to grow up. This one's really easy to look for when you get into October and November, because when all the leaves are down from all the other plants, if you're seeing green leaves out on the landscape, you're probably looking at buckthorn. Next slide. Phragmites, not so bad in Marathon County at this point. This one's split listed in the state of Wisconsin between restricted and prohibited. Marathon County is right on the border. If we go east towards Green Bay, if any of you are accustomed to driving along the Lake Michigan corridor there and you see all this really tall ornamental grass looking stuff, that's Phragmites. We have a few patches here in Marathon County, but we're just really trying to make sure it's not going any further to the west. We can skip that one. It's just identification characteristics. Purple loosestrife is another one I really wanted to talk about because any of the park systems or even our roadsides, any of you here, if you've driven from Rib Mountain south on I-39 towards the Cedar Creek, Croninwater area, and you see all the purple in the roadside ditches in August, that's all purple loosestrife. It can really impact our wetlands. So again, it's just another good one to look out for. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to transition into what are some things that we can do. Some of the earlier ones I discussed, the Japanese knotweed and buckthorn, is smaller populations. They can be either manually removed, or you can cut them and treat those areas. Of course, follow-up is necessary. The purple loosestrife, we actually have a biocontrol program in the state of Wisconsin. So that's where volunteers or organizations can raise. We actually dig up purple loosestrife roots. We grow them in a controlled area. We collect the purple loosestrife beetles, and we put about 10 beetles per pot. Those beetles mate, reproduce, and if everything goes well, each pot can produce about 1,000 beetles that you release out in those areas. Next slide. This one I threw in there kind of at the last minute is garden yellow loosestrife. We really don't see it a lot on the landscape around here, though I know where there are some populations out in the wild, but I brought it up because I've been at some of the local farmers markets lately. It is a restricted species in Wisconsin, and I'm seeing it show up in a lot of the cut flower bouquets. So I'm trying to figure out how I should approach that scenario at this point. Next slide. I did want to bring up wild parsnip. It is spreading more and more in Marathon County, and this is one that we'd really want to make sure if we're checking our parks out, let's make sure we don't have any of this in there. This is one of those invasive species or plants that if you get into it and you break the plant and get the sap on your skin, the sunlight will react with the sap on your skin and you can get burns on your skin. So it's one of those invasives that falls into the harmful impacts to humans. Giant hogweed is another one. This one's actually prohibited in Wisconsin because we only have about 3 or 4 locations. We don't have it that we're known of in Marathon County. We have one site down in Portage County. I like to show this one because we have native cow parsnip in the county, which looks very familiar. It's blooming right now. You might see these plants along the roadside. They may be 4 to 6 feet tall with these big white flowers on top, and the very large leaves is typically what's noticeable. But the one difference, if you go to the next slide, is our cow parsnip is always going to have an inflated area where a branch comes off the main stem. You'll see an inflated area there on the cow parsnip. The giant hogweed does not have that. Next slide. So if you do find stuff that you're not quite sure about, or you need to find more out about, or you're worried about, take a good picture. A nice close-up one maybe of the leaf, and then one standing back where you can see the entire plant. That's really the best thing to do. If you can drop a GPS point or mark it on your phone, or it's on the intersection of here, or it's in the south edge of this park, something that identifies that area well. And then it's just a matter of notifying either, you've got somebody like Jared, myself, the Parks Department, your local DNR staff. Those are really the best things you can do at that point. Next slide. And that's it. We basically, the invasive species law in Wisconsin for the aquatic side is cleaning off your boat, your motor, your trailer, draining all the water, and not moving. Well, it really applies to everything. Whether you're on the water, whether you're a gardener, whether anything you do outdoors, it's just a matter of cleaning your equipment and not moving things around. So moving forward with your park stuff, I think the best thing is just maybe knowing what's out there. With that, I can end unless there are any questions.
Yeah, if you could email me the PDF of this, I can send it out, because those pictures are really nice. And
Yes.
Sure.
having who to contact.
And by the way, I mentioned that Golden Sands is based out of Stevens Point. I live in Rothschild, so I'm local here. I cover Taylor, Marathon, Portage, Wapaka, Green Lake, Washera, so I'm in the area.
I do have one question. What if you know of like a private property, a business where there's a lot of one of the invasives? Like, what do you do? I mean, do you like contacting the DNR? Will they follow up with them? They might not know or know what to do, or may go about treating it, wrong. But so what do you do?
Sure.
What would I do?
So there's a couple of avenues that this can go by. So let's say I see a business or even a private residence, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll introduce myself. I'll explain to people what that plant is. And then it really depends if it's a restricted plant or prohibited. If it's prohibited, they're required by law to do something about it. So I would assist them, who can we contact? What can we do? If it's a restricted species like purple loosestrife or buckthorn, hey, that's what this is. Just be aware of it. If you're interested in removing it, I can assist you on ways that you would do that. If it's a really large area, Company X has 10 acres of land, and we find there's a bunch of Phragmites there. They want to do something with it. They're probably going to need some funding, so maybe I could assist them in finding grant funding through DNR or something of that matter. So it really kind of depends on the situation. Yep. Does that answer the
Thank you.
question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
But I could be your first contact to help start that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris and Jared.
Yes, thank you very much. Just one real quick thing before we adjourn. I just wanted to point out the one flyer in your packet of the Whitewater events that they have. They've done with their major reconstruction of the Whitewater area, and that's a day that they're going to open up their the gates or whatever for some competitions, and they are encouraging city council members and county board members and anyone who's interested, but specifically city council members, to come and join on that kind of ribbon cutting of their new course, or their revamped course.
And Jamie, can I just add that we will address some of the other educational items at next month's
Yep,
meeting?
yep.
And also, we will put on the agenda the information that was given to us by Mr. Gisselman. The next meeting date will be Monday, August 1st, Monday, August 1st. Now, the thing that I'm asking is, in the past, we've always met at 4:30. Is that sufficient for you, or do you want to stick with the 4 o'clock? What is best that the committee would like to do?
I like 4:30.
4:30? Tom?
I can be flexible.
Okay. Carol?
Same.
Okay.
And I would say, yeah, 4:30 would work. And if we know we're going to have something on that might take longer, then maybe we could just, schedule a particular meeting earlier.
Okay, then our next meeting will be Monday, August 1st at 4:30. Do we need a motion on that?
No, motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'm going to take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Sarah. I need a second. Second by Tom. Meeting adjourned at exactly 5:16 PM. Thank you very, very much. July 5th. Everybody have a good week, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, sorry we're getting out of here.
You feel the pressure?